David Brewster here, new episode of 3 for All. This is 3 Paul Gilbert licks from the year 2000. And if you search around on the channel, you'll see a lot of Paul Gilbert themed lessons. Chord play episodes for Racer X and Mr. Big. The secret arpeggios of Racer X, from breaking chords. There's some 3 for All, episodes looking at some of his licks. And for those of you watching, wondering like, wow, why is Brewster focusing so much on Paul Gilbert? Definitely, Paul Gilbert opened a lot of doors for me and inspired me, back when I was a teenager. And he still inspires me, of course. I'm a huge Racer X fan. I love his solo, albums, and definitely, some music from Mr. Big, too. But there's just something really eye-opening about his ideas, his approaches, his lessons and material, definitely very inspiring. And definitely helped me with sequencing scales, 3-note per string scales, string skipping, all sorts of stuff. So Paul Gilbert's a big influence of mine. And that's basically why I've featured, him and his music so much on my channel. I believe I've talked about this before in other Paul Gilbert, themed lessons, but his intense rock videos, those classic REH instructional videos from back in the day, are worth their weight in gold. Those are great instructional videos, and I definitely spent a lot of time with Intense Rock 1 and Intense Rock 2. Terrifying Guitar Trip is cool. It's definitely a terrifying guitar trip, though. It's a really trippy video. But those first 2 Intense Rock videos are just packed with information. And I've read, players like John Petrucci and Mark Tremonti and some other players, use those videos to kind of boost their technique and awareness and their shredding, ability. So if you haven't seen those videos, actually part 1 and part 2 are together in a DVD, which is really handy. And if you don't have this or you haven't seen it, I highly recommend Paul Gilbert's, Intense Rock series. The licks in this lesson came from a live performance, I believe in Japan in the year 2000. And I watched this footage and then I saw another video of the same concert from a different camera out in the crowd. And I watched that. And during this footage, they played Bold as Love, a Hendrix cover. And for whatever reason, when Gilbert took this extended solo near the end, it just grabbed me. And I thought, you know what, I think I'm going to focus on this because it's another side of Paul Gilbert's music. We've already looked at some of his licks and string skipping and shredding and stuff. But this is different because he's basically playing a cover. And historically speaking, Gilbert's, released lots of covers of songs. With Mr. Big, they did the song Mr. Big by the band Free, 30 Days in the Hole from Humble Pie, and then he's recorded Beatles songs, and classical music, and Hendrix covers, and all kinds of stuff. So Gilbert has this knack of taking somebody else's music and then kind of twisting it and changing it and making it kind of more his own. And this is a good example of that because I believe during this footage he's actually tuned down a whole step and he's playing Bold as Love basically in the key of B. But then when you hear this footage and you see it, you can see he's playing basically in C sharp minor or C sharp minor pentatonic. But then to match, like in standard tuning, we're in B territory. So that led me to believe he's actually tuned down a whole step. But this lesson's in standard tuning. Just a heads up. The first lick from this footage actually features some of this targeted phrasing over the chord progression, and it's something like this. One more time. So before we dive into this lick, it's really important to understand the chord progression that he's playing over, and that way you'll see this targeted phrasing I was talking about. Gilbert has transposed this to the key of B, and he's also tuned down a whole step, like I mentioned a minute ago. So everything we're playing here in the footage, it actually looks like it's here, when Gilbert plays it. I didn't want to tune down a whole step, so I just left it in standard tuning. If you want to play it the exact same way that Gilbert did, tune down a whole step and then shift all of these licks up a whole step and you'll be there. But anyway, the chord progression from Bold as Love in the key of B is like this. Sharp major, G sharp minor, and then this A to A sharp, and then right back to B again. And he's targeting that progression, with this lick, because he's doing this. Right. So right there he's bending the C sharp up to D sharp, which matches the B chord. Right? And then you hear that resolve back to that C sharp. And that actually fits over that F sharp minor, because C sharp is part of that chord. And right there he comes out of that bend and targets G sharp, which is the next chord. And then you hear this kind of hybrid pick, kind of slid lick, you know, that G sharp into that B, and then you're ending on that A. Right? And he doesn't actually target that A sharp, but it's, you know, in the background right there. And then you hear it go into the next lick. So one more time with this lick. I'm going to loop that chord progression so you can actually hear what it sounds like targeted, like this. The next lick's kind of a variation of some of the things that Hendrix did in the original version of Bold as Love. But then here, Gilbert's basically chasing the chord progression with this kind of simple pull-off pattern. And it's actually really good workout for your pinky finger. So if your pinky feels a little weak or needs some extra attention, check out this lick. But it's something like this. Something like that. Once again, we're just following that chord progression. So this first stretch right there, that's B major. Right? And then we're going to move all the way down to F sharp major right here. So that's a big stretch. It's actually a bigger stretch than Gilbert played, because once again, he's tuned, you know, down a whole step. So he's playing it right here. And in standard tuning, you have to do it right there. So that's really stretchy. And then G sharp minor right here. And then A major, A sharp, and then you're right back in B right there. You know, and I love, you know, phrases like that. And you can hear things, you know, from Hotel California, and you know, there's Randy Rhoads licks and all kinds of, you know, licks that use those kind of pull-off, you know, pivot arpeggios like that. But that's really cool, the way he's kind of just, you know, dancing around that chord progression, just using that simple pull-off. The next lick is the next part of this footage, and he basically makes a variation of what we just looked at. So he was, you know, using those pull-offs and just kind of moving through the progression. And then this one, he adds a little twist to it. But it's something like this. Something like that. So once again, we're starting the same way. You're going to do that twice, and then he's reaching up and grabbing this E note, which that's technically the sus4 of B. So he's kind of doing that, but he's doing it like this. So it's an extra fret, you know, stretch right there. So that might be pretty tricky for some of you out there. Right? And then he reverts back to this. And then, which is really cool. And once again, he's kind of playing with sus chord, but he's doing it like that. That's kind of like an F sharp sus4 and then F sharp major right there, which is really crafty. And then the same G sharp minor we had earlier, and then that A to A sharp, and then the A sharp, and then back to B. You know, really cool. And I liked noticing, you know, what he changed, you know, compared to the first version, and then this kind of alternate, you know, variation that he made. Really cool. The next lick reveals the next variation that Paul threw out during this solo, and this is really cool. It's a sequenced string-skipping arpeggio shred lick. But I like the fact that each time this section of the solo came around, Paul changed what he played, and he started to kind of increase the intensity level, and it's really cool. But something like this. One more time. So the shape Paul's using there in the beginning of this phrase is a B major string skipped arpeggio, and we've looked at these, shapes and fingerings in other episodes on this channel. Just search for Paul Gilbert and you'll start finding them. But really slowly, I'm going to walk through this really slow. He's basically doing this. That's the first part. So right here. It's just kind of crammed in there. And it's kind of hard to get it clean because you're skipping over strings and you're kind of racing back and forth between notes. But one more time, really slow. It's just that weird little thing at the end of that phrase because it's going back from that B to that D sharp. And that's just kind of tricky. It's kind of, hard to get back there. And he's just flying through there, of course, because it's Paul Gilbert. And you hear this. So it's really just a variation of the very first lick that we played, but he's doing it in another position, and he's also kind of racing into that that G sharp and that B note before he gets to that A note right there. He basically does that 3 times right there. So really slowly all the way through it. Right there you can hear that 3 times. And then one more time all the way through it. Okay, I have no idea what's going on here. I guess this is a bonus lick, because I've already shown technically 4 different licks. But this is yet another lick from this footage, and this one reminds me of Steve Morse. So I grabbed it because I was like, hey, this is kind of like a Paul Gilbert Steve Morse lick. Really cool. Once again, same performance, same key, same jam over Bold as Love. But this time he's doing this. One more time. This one's a handful for sure. There's a lot going on. So if we slow that one down, you can actually see what's going on there. We're starting with this whole step bend from C sharp to D sharp twice. And then you've got this pull off pattern right here twice. And then you're doing, and then, well, right there you've got, and then after that one you're doing, and that's where it starts sounding a little bit like Steve Morse to me, because you're doing this. Right? And then right there, he basically stretches up an extra fret and grabs that E. But then he goes back to D sharp after that. And then right there, he starts coming down B minor pentatonic. Something like this. One more time. It's just a really cool lick, the way it all kind of flows, but it's all crammed in there, and he's just flying through the sequencing and stuff. Really cool lick. That's going to wrap this look at 3 Paul Gilbert licks from the year 2000. And like I mentioned earlier, Paul's been a huge influence on me. He's opened lots of doors and opened my eyes to a lot of different things, adapting, licks and phrases, from other instruments to the guitar, and music, that wasn't originally played on the guitar, and bringing it over to the guitar. And just, there's this playful kind of energy, in his music and his musical approaches, his educational material. I mean, his instructional videos are hilarious. But then while you're laughing at all of his goofy jokes and nerdy, things that he does, you're learning. So I like this laugh and learn kind of approach that he's used, for decades. Because, yeah, music's hard and music theory is confusing and it's really easy to get frustrated and you start throwing, music theory books out a window or something, or burning, your music theory book or whatever. But, if you can kind of put some humor in there along the way, and kind of, break up some of the monotony or the hard work, and you're laughing or at least smiling or something, giggling or whatever, it makes it way easier. It makes it a little bit more exciting and more fun. And it takes some of the work and that dull, kind of, man, this is hard and this is like school or whatever. It takes some of that away, and that's one thing I really respect about Paul Gilbert is just, I mean, yeah, he's a shred, legend. He's a great performer, songwriter, a legend of performing music, but he's also an educational person, a teacher. And you can see it and you can hear it, the way he presents things, the way he breaks things down and talks, and of course the way he plays too. But, huge influence on me as a player, but then also as an educator too. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Melodic Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more content and material. Thank you.